Although the time has passed and come from the English Creek Nationals, here the 22nd annual running of this entire show proved to be quite an interesting one.
You can't stop but won't stay dead, 'cause there's a dead man racing right up ahead.
Hi everyone, and I am back here once again here on the Dead Man's Hit List channel. I'm giving you guys a little new thing I'm kind of experimenting with, kind of something new to try out here. So we'll see how it goes, see how it works here, and I want your guys' thoughts on this here. This is basically my coverage and recap of what had happened from English Creek Speedway here for the 22nd Annual Nationals. And I plan to do this with pretty much every race that I go to or announce for or work with in this case to kind of help not only keep short track racing alive, but also to kind of keep more of an eye out for those that may not have been seeing as much or may not be in talking as much. So feel free to comment and leave me more questions or info that I could use for later on down the road on how to do this and see how it goes from there. So with that in mind, let's get to it. So night number one, obviously English Creek Nationals proved to be quite an interesting show in itself here. Obviously you saw quite a few of the interviews I was doing there on day one and talking with the drivers, and obviously their excitement levels was through the roof. A lot of folks were ready to go and ready to get down to it, and there was quite a bit in that situation, that kind of area down there, that really felt like this was a big event and it had a big feel to it. And obviously, a lot of people were very happy and ready to get to it. Even some big names from the high limit side there in Tanner Holmes had came by to visit an old track of his that he had success with, and he had basically on his way to, of course, the road to outlaws, as I always say, of sprint car racing for the high limit racing series that he runs in today. And many other people that came along the way as well. That was just honestly an absolute pleasure to be had and be able to chat with you guys and talk with. So for that, I thank you for giving your time and effort as well for being doing the interviews. I know some that weren't quite as long or as short as they could have been, but for what it's worth, I always just appreciate anyone gives their time and is willing to step up and actually do these kind of things, because it is a scary thought, especially for the youngsters. They're learning their craft and trying to have fun and enjoy their stuff, but at the same time learning there's a whole new world that can evolve around in racing and evolve around for bigger things. So big thank you to them and everything for that. So with that said, let's get on to night number two and what happened there. So night number two started with, of course, the from day one's dashes into day two's main events. So the B mains were up front and center, and everyone that was trying to make it in had to work hard or work their way in and around. We saw some very big moments and very big situations there that transfer spots were up for grabs in the four classes that ran, which was R box stock, 250, and 500. And it ended up really kind of giving me an idea and a bit of a taste of what is to expect and what is to be seen. And honestly, from what I saw, there was just absolutely nothing but chaos and craziness mixed in, just trying to even get a place into these A mains. But at the end of the day, somebody had to make it in, and those elite that made it in had quite a showing and quite a run, which brings me in, of course, to the R Box stock division. So the R-Box stock division, when they had gone into the circuit and got into this race, I was kind of expecting them to be kind of front and center heavy. Keep in mind, these are 4 to 7 year old drivers there that are out on the track trying to push their world and trying to push everything to its limits. But I feel like there were some big names that need to stand out. So in all these divisions, I'm going to talk about the top five and anyone that I felt like was really kind of a showcase in itself and honestly was very big on their deal there. So names like Warner Brewer, who had started back from 16th and making their way up through to 13th, had quite a bit of a run there and quite a show there. Braxton Klein, every time I see him get out on that circuit, he's always pushing his limits and pushing himself further and further. He got really good, in my opinion, this time around, and I think there is more that we can see out of him. Some names that kind of fell down where I felt like they shouldn't have there. Sawyer Struck had a bit of a tough time there. Got kind of caught up in some of the chaos and madness there late in the race, and unfortunately found himself in a bit of a bad rut. And, even Brock McCumber, honestly, a name that I would have expected a little bit higher in the standings, just shows you that how tough these competitors were. The biggest surprise, though, to me that I was very impressed with and I was very happy to see, because I felt like there was about time they figured out, was Olivia Ambers. They started 8th going into 6th, which by the way, all this stuff you can see is on my race pass as well. So be sure to visit that up if you want to see more information like what I'm talking about and give more facts and context of this. But honestly, going in from last season into this season, there wasn't a lot of folks were expecting out of that young little girl, but honestly, what I saw was probably the most improved driver of the entire English Creek Nationals entirely. She had gone out there from her days from back season, just barely getting it in, if not falling short, and then finally figuring it out and ends up going from eighth into sixth in a field like this. That just shows me honestly that there is much more that are still to come. And honestly, yeah, I think some of these drivers need to be careful because I think she's going to start figuring something out. She definitely's got a good mind to it and got a good family behind her. It's only just a matter of time. So let's talk about the top five though. Top five, Braxton Miller goes starts fifth. He finishes fifth. Laid down a good run there. Did a great job hanging around the track, but it was in that battle and contention throughout this entire race. In my opinion, this was, if not maybe the second most raciest race we had. I know it sounds silly, but you got to think what I'm saying here is that they had basically gone door to door, elbows out, racing hard around the track and just absolutely firing all cylinders, trying to get everything going. And yet they just never gave up and they never stopped being as clean or hard of racers as they were. To that, I salute them and I honestly am very proud of them for the fact that these young lads and lasses was able to do that at that kind of stake. And it's just very impressive in my opinion. It deserves the credit it does there. Ian McDormand, the doorman himself, man, he just absolutely throughout the season, in the regular season, has just been lights out, been fighting and scratching and clawing. And I guarantee it, it's just a matter of time before he ends up walking away with a major win to his name and gets a championship to his stake. I think he's one driver you got to watch out for, and it's just a matter of time. Willard Ballard. Well, I mean, what can I say? He's moving up, of course, here soon in the box stocks and further up. But his performance in this R box race was far none. Definitely a very solid performance. Great run there. Nothing else I can really say that hasn't already been said about him. The second place finisher, starting from second, from third up to second, was Carter Lane, ended up being the bridesmaid in this one, but not a lack of trying because throughout this race, like I said, that top five was swapping paint and swapping positions and swapping the carts around as much as they were, and still having a very hard race to follow. And the fact is, like, the winner did not get away with this one easily. It ended up being both drivers absolutely taking this thing to the limit and going to the line. But it was Everett Knorr, the driver out of Harrisburg, North Carolina. And you're going to have to get used to me saying North Carolina for this one because North Carolina, they came for the legacy today. They wanted to edge their names into history. They were not holding back. So, out of all the series, only one did not have a North Carolina driver win this divisions in the 22nd annual English Creek Nationals. That should tell you something pretty quick. But um, Everett Knorr, honestly lost the lead for a couple laps there, fought, scratched, clawed it, and run it back from the bottom, got that lane, got an opening, and from there they just went whole hom. So congratulations to them on their championship run here for the R Box stock. So with that said, let's get into intermediate wing. So the intermediate wing did not have anybody have to go into a B main or into that transfer spot. Instead, they actually ran their race from the A main onward. So they ran their heats, of course, ran their dash, and then of course then comes the A main. And really, there were some top contenders in here that I want to kind of bring in here. Ryder Wilson starts in 15, goes up 3 spots. Definitely firing all cylinders in quite a few areas there. Casey Rylson, despite qualifying fifth, unfortunately had a bit of a mechanical problem and cost them dearly, and it just sent them back further and further into the field. There was not a whole lot they can do. One very big surprise here was two drivers, in my opinion. One of them was Lauren Fultner, who started 10th, goes into 8th. Lauren, in my opinion, she definitely, week in and week out, seems like she's improving, getting things figured out. I think it's just a matter of time before you see her start to really put things together and start to really dial stuff in. But this was a very tough field. And to tell you how tough, the driver started 16th out of the 16 field, even though they had one to scratch in this case. Jacob Demmel, what can I say about that guy? Oh, my word. He started and went up 9 spots from 16th to the 7th position. He was not letting anything get in his way. And honestly, I would have been very surprised to see if what he could have done if he was racing up front. He certainly had a lot of power, a lot of drive, and that mentality of his just was working perfectly. He left nothing on the table. The top five: Alan Byrne going fifth, Ashley Panowski going fourth, Dominic Weber, Trenton Pearson, and Carter Beatty, your top three. Let's kind of talk about that for a second because Dominic and Trenton, it seemed like really their story was just can they get to Carter? And that Beatty family, that Beatty gang tonight was not leaving anything on that day. They were basically going for broke and nothing less or nothing more. And I think they proved it and showed it in so many ways that honestly should be commended at the same time, respected the fact that, no tech issues or anything like that. Just basically went full center and full strong. Credit to them and credit to them so, for doing all that there. So obviously, the drivers out of Concord, North Carolina, got the job done when they needed to and performed at a high level. There's not a whole lot I could talk about the intermediate wings because, like I said, it was the Carter Beatty show all day. They just went straight through it and just ran that thing down the ground. So congratulations to them on their claim to fame here with the intermediate championship with 22nd Annual Nationals. So, with that said, let's get to box stocks. So at box stocks, it was a very interesting dilemma and very interesting situation that kind of transpired down there because there was a lot of drivers that came to this one and they were looking to try and take whatever they could. Many ranging areas and obviously a lot of power and speed that these drivers are bringing into, and some that are just getting ready for those 250 cc's and above from here. I mean, they were not going to let anything out on the track other than just hard racing and hard momentum. And once again, it kind of showed and proved itself as we got further along into this race. So, one thing I really want to kind of pinpoint on is the hard chargers here. One of them being the number 4C there, Carson George. He goes from 16 to 11, and I wasn't too surprised by that. And the fact is, Carson George, despite I believe not getting a win in this season so far with the regular weekly series, he's been a contender in and out every time, fires it up hard, and just gets it going really good. And it honestly was very impressive to see, finding different lanes and finding that run. Even talking through the interview, he said, he needs to find that run on the bottom, find that lane, and find that drive. And I think he definitely did that. But I think the longer it went, it ended up kind of falling more out of his hands because there was just so much, talent on display and really kind of using it to their advantage. So it ended up kind of backfiring on him in that case. Um, Other finishers here I kind of want to focus on here. I want to go with Carson Sanders. Now, Carson, yet again, another talented kid, talented driver. He went 12th to 7th. He was definitely firing them up a bit and wanting so badly to get up there. I know he had a big pit crew and family behind him that night. At the end of the day, though, the fact that he got where he did and he was able to run as long as he did, I consider that more than anything a very big, proud moment for him and his crew. And I think he should not, let that one sneak by him. Riker Lopez Beck. Oh, man, this kid, yet again, 13th to 7th, or 6th, excuse me. He goes 7 spots up. He definitely had a lot of aggression there on that track and had a lot of momentum he was bringing through. I think the one thing though that I think he'll figure it out as he goes is that he can get the speed down, he could get the cornering down, but I think the biggest thing he needs to avoid is trying to get in his own way. Just kind of stay within his reach, focus on his shot, and just keep doing what he's doing on the track. Because I think honestly he could be one of those names that kind of starts to make more of a noise there at English Creek, and not just on the weekly series, but I think further along from there in the championship run. So let's talk about the top five now. So we kind of got up to that. So top five in this one here, Cruz Miller, he goes fifth. Started third and falls back into fifth. He's already won a main event here in the weekly series. He's definitely one of those guys you got to kind of watch out for, and he knows what he can do at his level and his pace. I think that's one driver that I think can do it more than anything. So have to see how it goes from there in this case. You got Braylon here who goes fourth. He started back in fifth. Braylon, definitely another handful to deal with on the track, and I think not in that bad way in a sense, but in a good way, obviously, because the drivers know there are certain types of drivers that will get the job done and they can get it figured out. If you give them one opening or one little gap, it's really just all of a sudden more trouble than it is worth to try to close that door. You got to fight back for it really quickly, and they're well aware of that. Third, starting from sixth, goes to third, Dax Housley. I'm not surprised with him. He's a former winner here at English Creek. He's a former winner in many tracks, many situations. Dax just, he has something inside that mind of his that says if it's time to go, it's time to go. And, he's working that way up, obviously, into bigger classes. I believe he's also working 250s, I believe, right now as well. I think we may get into him just a second. But he has power. He's got a left foot down there, but he knows how to control it with those hands on that steering wheel. So, I think honestly, this is another kid that down the road we're going to be hearing more of, and we'll see how it goes. Wyatt Bird, even though made that trip all the way from Illinois down to here, definitely came out with a lot of run, a lot of timing and pacing, and they, in my opinion, had squared it up really well. They used what they had to at their advantage, stayed focused on the lanes, and it worked out well. So kudos to them. But of course, Mount Pleasant, North Carolina's driver Thomas Mullins is the one who comes out on top, starts on the top position, qualified first, and gets into the first. That box stock race, like I said, kind of like what I said about intermediate, it was really hard to get back up to the front, back up to that position, especially when things get a little rough and harder. There's not a whole lot you can do. So it ended up playing that way. And Thomas ended up catching a big break there. And at the end of the day, you got to take those breaks and take them with confidence. Otherwise, you're never going to get that win. You're never going to get that top spot. He knew it. He figured it out. And guess what? He's one that's on top. So credit to him for that one, which now brings us into the 250cc Winged Outlaws. 250cc Winged Outlaws, once again, just like them in the 500s, in my opinion, they are the carts that and the winged machines that, honestly, in my opinion, that are just absolutely tailor made for pure speed and power. These cage carts are not to be denied, and they are not to be messed with on any level. Again, obviously 500s are much more powerful, but this 250s give you just a good idea of what you're dealing with to an extent before you really start to let it loose and let it rip. And once again, we got a good glimpse of that here from these crews and these drivers. Man, they came in droves, and they were absolutely swinging for a lot of fences. And in some cases throughout the season has been in the fence, because that's how hard they'll run and that's how hard they'll go. They will not stop. So some names I want to pick out in this one here. Obviously, I want to kind of pick out more towards the top 10 in this case here, but I'm looking at a hard charger there, starting back from 19th. Yeah, you heard me right. 19th and getting to 7th. Forrest Vanpool. What a run there they had. Obviously they traveled all the way from Cottonwood, California. They were not going to leave anything just in some little small town in Iowa, without being able to get some kind of glory out of this. And I guess with this video, kind of help solidify that. But you go back and watch that video, man. Like, they were not going to just let anybody buy them, and they wanted everyone to get behind them. They were firing on all cylinders, and they had maintained distance and maintained control. They get, or is it maybe a bit aggressive at times? Absolutely. But that's the whole thing about racing, is that sometimes pure aggression and pure racing is just two of the same thing. Now, can that aggression be a little bit more silly and get a little too much out of control? Absolutely. And like I said, as an announcer, I will call it out and say, like, hey, it gets a little too out of hand or a little too much at stake. Maybe they just didn't think about it at that time, but those split second reactions are like everything. You cannot let up or give up anything on that. You got to stay focused, and you got to stay on that run and get things under control. But at the end of the day, Forrest didn't just get to that position for nothing. He had to fight and scratch and claw for it. So he did, and credit to him for that. Another one here, going top 5 now. Brody Conkey. I hope I'm saying names right. If I am not, have at it with me in the comment section. But Brody, obviously had a good showing there. Started in 7, going into the top 5. They had a lot of work to do, again, to try to even get in these positions, because, again, once you're in that top 5 bracket, now you are literally racing against drivers that, in my opinion, could literally be the future of really any sport or division they want, whether it be the World of Outlaws, the high limit racing, NASCAR, NHRA, drag racing, or even the dirt bike series or motocross and stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, or even IndyCar. Like, what we see now that we run on 4 wheels or other kind of classes and specialties, these guys could be the future in many ways, and we just don't even know it. That's why I always say with these, I'm trying to support for local short tracks and everything too, and that's kind of why I have this whole Dead Man's Hit List channel as well for that, and that's what I'm really wanting to do. But enough about that. Congrats to Brody for obviously going top 5. Made the trip down from Wisconsin, definitely had a good run there. Caden Williams, they had to travel from Minden, Nevada, but they were sure traveling through that pack. Start 9th, going to 4th. They had power, they had some momentum, and they knew what to do with it. And that's the big thing too, is that you see a lot of these drivers, they're going head over heels trying to find these runs and find this momentum. They will not give an inch if they can, and they will do everything they have to just to get to that position. It didn't quite work out that night, but you know what? At the end of the day, you can still hang your head up high and realize where you're at. To me, that's impressive in its own right. Knox Peterson. Honestly, what do I have to say about Knox? That hasn't already been said. I mean, I guess I'll have to explain to the people that don't know him. Knox Pearson, one of our local drivers as well as weekly drivers. This guy is someone that will not let just anything go in the wrong order in the wrong way. He will find every little ounce of engine power and every little speed that they can and fire it on all cylinders if it just even means getting that little bit extra. They are very hard on the track to beat, and they're very hard to outrace. And in my opinion, Knox that day once again proved that he still has it and quite a bit more going, so kudos to him. Holden Harder. This is a new name that came in a little bit right before the Nationals. I noticed how much they were doing, what they were doing on the track. I believe they got a main win already, if I remember right from this. So going in, I knew that this was going to be a little bit more competitive, and this one may be the one that some of these drivers got to watch out for. It proved me right in this case here. Holden came in and said, "Hey, I'm here to race, guys. What are you up to?" He was not kidding around. He was definitely with that power and speed all the way around the track. Just it fell short today because what do you know? Carter Beatty once again brings another one home to Concord, North Carolina, and Carter just absolutely the Beatty family and gang. Like I said, they they were not coming in here for anything less. They were coming to try and lay claim to the fame, and like I said, they were down to fight it out to the very end. And that just shows you how hard it is to do this, let alone be able to get this in that position. So success came and success has gone now with Carter back to North Carolina. So congratulations taking the 250cc Winged Outlaws. Let's get now into our final two classes, which this is going to be an interesting little dilemma we're going to run into here. I mean, honestly, the adult wing outlaw was probably the biggest, like, out of nowhere situation we had ran into all season round. Again, because again, going into this one, there's usually not too many adult wing drivers. We'd love to get that boosted back up. I'd love to see more of them go out there. Because again, this adult wing is no joke. There's a lot of hard racers and a lot of good ones out there. And I know if they can get that class filled up, there'll be even more heavy hitters to be watching out for. But they came in stride and they came to fight. So who exactly came out with the better of the hands? Well, let's talk about it, because what I want to talk about is the one who ended up in ninth due to a DNF, and that is Meki Harshaw. The driver out of Concord, North Carolina, just was dominating this race and dominating this whole week. This whole week, 2 days stretch, it was pretty much, could you find a way to outsmart or outrace Meki? If you didn't figure it out, you was in trouble. And a lot of drivers thought they had that little extra bit, thought they had found it, but only the race winner was the one that had just enough speed to try to challenge them for it. But it just seemed like timing and everything was not on their side. But at the end of the day, a mechanical failure midway in the race just absolutely dashed them and took it away from them. To that, I say, I hate to see it and I hate to have gone, but like I said, it would, if it not been for that, North Carolina would have absolutely taken this entire 22nd annual nationals away from any of the local guys, any of the other folks that came around from out of town. It was literally a mechanical problem that snake bit one of them, and that's what ended up being the situation that stopped him in this case. So that said, though, who was the top five? Well, the top five ended up going something like this. The fifth place spot was Paxton Benj. Paxton, I chatted with them beforehand. Obviously throughout the season they've been really good, really solid. They've been doing great, and they look great on the track. And it wasn't too surprising to me that honestly they were competitive and they were right there with them. I guess my biggest thing is just like how long was it going to take before things got less into their stride and more in their effect. And unfortunately, it just did not quite go the way they wanted to, and ended up finishing top five, which I think, in my opinion, honestly, should be remarkable considering like what kind of level of competition they were dealing with. Landon George, another one, honestly, that I watch carefully out for whenever they're racing, not because of anything special, but just because they have power and they have speed. They were definitely looking to use it. They did it this time. It just ended up only getting them into fourth, but they had some great battles there with Paxton as well as this driver, Caden Arpey. Caden Arpey, you know, early in the race week, I was not too sure of. I kind of called him I think if I announced right, I think it was my wild card like drivers, like kind of the one I could not figure out. Like, am I going to get I hate using this reference, but it's like my box of chocolates. Like, I don't know if it's going to be nice and sweet and tasty and have full of richness and run, or is it just gonna leave me wondering where was the run, like where was the taste? Because I don't taste anything anymore. It's the one of those. Man, again, I'm not trying to say anything bad at Caden, great driver and did great work on that track, but it's hard to really get consistency when you're just not performing or showing it, and that's kind of where I felt it was. But today that day it ended up working great. It ended up going good on that. I'd love to see more of them if they can get on a weekly series side, or obviously I'll see them next season. That'd be great too. But at the end of the day, performing top three in nationals, I mean, that's no small task and that's no easy feat. And thinking of someone who's been trying desperately to get back to the top of the leaderboard nationals, Chad Nils goes second, qualifies for the fourth spot, gets second place. I mean, this was probably another heartbreaker for him. And obviously, in our deal of a situation that they went through, they obviously were going for broke. They knew they had to do it. They're a master of running these things on the weekly end. They've only lost one A main up to this point. And, the fact is that they did what they could, did what they needed to. It just wasn't enough this time. In my opinion, nothing to scoff at, nothing to sneeze at. My opinion, very well done and very well executed on their end. So kudos to them for their drive and everything they got. But the one that came out on top, which I've now nicknamed the Alligator Gar himself, Noah Gar. The reason I gave him that nickname is because he's as fast as one and he can bite like one. And he absolutely bit quite a bit of the track layout out for the drivers and took full speed advantage of it, just basically just waiting for that moment. And again, when Mekki ended up having the motor problems and just putting them out of the track and into the infield, it was all Noah's to lose that point. Nothing left there for them to catch him. He had speed already. He was definitely trying to show something and he knew what to do. So if anything, Noah definitely had dialed this thing in and nailed it without a doubt. So kudos to Noah Gar for getting the adult wing. And I guess if I want to be a little bit biased, being the only Iowa driver that took home one and one of the local guys, if you will. So, but that now brings me into what, in my opinion, is been the race of the night. Let's talk about the Open 500s. So before I even get into this, I will say this, and I will kind of make this clear as well, that you can view this race on the cushion. This race was broadcasted and everything there. And again, I do apologize if my voice cracked there at the very end, but you'll know why if you watch it. You know what I'm talking about. But this race, in my opinion, just exemplifies why this means so much to these guys. Again, these are young talents that are learning a trade and learning a hobby that could someday become their life's passion, their life's work. And they go out there and just not only put on a show for the fans, but also just kind of try to outrace everyone else and find their lane and find their line. And this was the race, in my opinion, that just showed so much of truly what this track brings to the table, as well as what these drivers bring to the table. It was a wonderful show to say the least, and this is a must-see event every year, in my opinion. And now you understand why if you go back and watch just this race. This was like the race that you would have paid your hard-earned money just to go see. But it's not to say anything bad about the R box or the box stocks or intermediates or any of them. Like they were fantastic. I want to make that clear. Like they were very race heavy in R box. Intermediate, they basically went full throttle and no cautions. Box stocks were all in it to win it, and they threw everything they had to the wire, and they did a great job at it. 250, same thing. And adult, some surprises coming out of that. But this one was all that and probably a side of bacon cheese fries for me in this case. So, yeah, let's get into it though. Let's stop. So, if you have stayed when you have watched it, let's kind of get into the whole crux of it. So, some surprises early on. Brody Tucker, one of the hottest kids and hottest drivers that gets it done on the track. Mechanical problems early, just scratched them out, took them out of the race. Nothing they can do about it. And absolutely everything just not going right or well costs them dearly, and it puts them in the infield literally before the green flag even goes out. A tough break there for them. Literally everyone from the top 10 up, racing and jockeying for position, trying to push and shove their way around as much as they can. Some getting into worse tangles than others. Even some like Jackson Iller, who usually is one you got to watch out for getting into that top spot each and every week, found themselves in 14th, kind of thrown back to the wires a bit. Preston Smith, another one too that got snake bit there. They literally qualify second and they end up getting sent back to 17th because of just trouble out of the gate. And then in the later half, just absolutely throwing themselves into nothing but disarray and couldn't get themselves out of it at the very end. There was not much they could do. Obviously, tempers were flying in this one in some cases, and some drivers were just kind of mad at the other. But when you're racing for that kind of prestige, that kind of level, it is something that you only get one shot at every year. It means something more to them, and that's why, again, this race was so indicative of what, in my opinion, was such a great occasion, a great battle. So let's get to the top 10. Kenzie Brown, they will go from 16th to 10th. Made a hard charge and made some very valuable calculations there as drivers were making errors and making some problems. That's something you got to be very careful of too, because again, if you think you got a driver that's going to cause more problems and keep you out of trouble, let them cause the trouble and you just basically sneak on by. It's an old clever tactic. It's a mind tactic, but at the same time, it's a good way to basically outsmart the field. Kenzie, in my opinion, pulled that off. Hot driver and hot line up there in Riley Dawson. Again, I know my niece never shuts up about him, so sorry, Riley. But Riley, honestly though, for what we can tell, we always say is that he's got a lead foot in that foot, but he's got a good mind up there as well. Strong contender, strong racer. They knew what they were doing in this case here and made sure to kind of stay in the lanes and kind of stay in control. And when it was all said and done, the fact that they only fall back one position from their qualifying position here for the race, honestly, just kind of shows you that they were in it and they had something. Briley Pompey, another hard runner there, actually started from 14th, goes to 8th. Traveling all the way from Philomath, Oregon here and having to travel up this far. They weren't going to do anything less but run hard and run good. And the fact that they end up getting into 8th shows you quite a bit there and tells you a lot more than you need to. Jaden West qualifies 5th, goes 7th. Another good runner there and taking full steam ahead. Again, it was just like I said, was some late issues and antics there that caught some drivers off guards and some that were able to kind of focus in on the race, and that's what you have to do. Cohen McDaniel goes up from 9th to 6th. Made a good long hard charge as well. If I remember right, I think it was late running there that they were kind of dealing with the track line. The bottom of the track was where most drivers were playing all night long, but that middle groove did have a little bit. The outside groove was just not there. They couldn't get any rubber or cushion built up. So the Vern was where most people were going to go to. But if you couldn't get to the Vern, you had to basically try to push or mount your charge as quick as you could to that inside so you can basically push the other driver up. And that's what ended up costing some. Cohen was one of those that found the openings where they were doing that and stayed in control. Walker over turf, another heavy hitter, another one you got to keep your eye on at times. When they're running on the weekly side, they're absolutely putting this thing to its limits and to the ground. Definitely a good run there from them and a good showing as well. So kudos and credit to them for that. And then, in my opinion, this one is, other than the race to finishers, this one, in my opinion, was the show of the night. And I really wish I had said more when I was live. But yeah, that's kind of the reason why I wanted to do this, because I want to talk about those that I really didn't get enough say credit in or like give enough to talk about. And even for those that are just now learning about this, like just get their name out. But in my opinion, 17th to 4th. That's already impressive as it is. But how about when everyone else is literally like holding their lane, holding your drive, and next thing you know, you're the one that has to either A, get them out of your way, or B, the way he did it, and just run through gaps like it was running out of business. And that was Gage Stevens. Gage, that night, in my opinion, other than the top two, were the MVPs of this race, and honestly were probably one of the finest we had on full display. They muscled, they charged, and went through anything that moved or that looked like an opening, but it still looked like about as just elbows out racing and clean as you can go without wrecking the other. And again, it's just, that's how hard on a bull ring you got to race. You got to fight for it, and you got to look for openings. Again, didn't damage anyone's equipment or screw themselves out of anything. They just stayed right in that lane, and Gage was going charge full send. So kudos to Gage for quite a performance, and I know obviously it made a lot of people happy and very excited for that one. Tanner Cheek, they came down and they came swinging again. All three of these drivers, by the way, are from North Carolina. So Hamptonville for Tanner here. I mean, honestly, if this race gone any differently, I think Tanner might have been the guy to maybe, if at the very least he wasn't top 5, he could have been a little higher than 3rd. I don't know if he would have had the speed necessarily to keep that lead there if he got it, because there was a lot of hard runners. But Tanner, to his credit, played it smart, ran it well, and that's all you got to do sometimes is just kind of keep yourself out of trouble and stay out of the mess. But they definitely were not letting up on anybody that day. And then these two right here, the second place finisher, Carter Beatty. Like I said, the Beatty gang was all on it that night. They were in it to win it, but oh, did they run into a roadblock and an obstacle in their way? And that one was the race winner, Carson Quapple. I'm probably sure I messed their last name up. I don't know how many times, so I hope I'm saying this right now. But the drive Carter out in Concord and then Carson out in Mooresville, like I guarantee you they probably have crossed paths before. Because if they didn't, and this is the first time they did, oh my word, that's gonna be a very fun talking to back in North Carolina. Because Carter and Carson on this late stage of the race ended up having some cautions come out from the back stack, and as they were making their way through, I believe it was first caution, they were literally right in the lap traffic's way, and they were going all on it, trying to stay away from each other. Carson was coming flying in like literally a harpoon off of a sinking ship and trying to literally grab as much of the ocean bed as they could. They found all of it in a bag of chips. Like the last caution that came out before Carson finally got his run, they get trapped in the lap traffic, and it was literally just at that point which one was going to best the other. We're running low on laps. Carson's having to hold down Carter as much as they can. Carter is going side by side. Next thing you know, keep in mind 500 cc's of power, open wheels, and coming off turn 3 and 4. What do? They mash heads and they mash tires in like it was nobody's business. It was about as insane as I've ever seen, because I've always said I've never been a sprint car guy. I've always been a fender guy. They made me a fan after this one, because I'm literally looking with my jaw dropped trying to announce this, and I'm just trying to figure out how in the Hades are they doing this the way they did. Well, at the same time, obviously they're trying not to wreck each other. They go back and forth, and then the caution brews out, and it stops the battle. Carson got the better of him on the restart. He had to go full send. He basically just drove that thing into the ground and made sure to hold into the rubber of the lane. Used the left side wheels to basically grip right sides into the fresh dirt to let it rip off and just slide around the turn. And it was just end over end for them. Carson was not giving this one up. So, not only, by the way, yeah, this is the same Carson Quapple you're thinking of. This is the O'Reilly Series driver who won at Iowa Speedway, which ironically I was there to watch too. So, I watched that. And, obviously he won at Indy as well. So, he's got back to back wins, and then to just go into literally one of the hottest hotbeds for not only, cage kart racing, but really one of the biggest circuit races of the season for anybody that is a fan of cage karts or anything that may be doing sprint cars. This was literally like the moment in time, and that confidence really showed there, and that boost of energy to get that win and just come out swinging for the fences. It just shows you everything you need to know. So, but like I said, don't take my word for it. Go watch it. Go see it. Like, if you can watch it on the cushion, go ahead. If you made it out there and saw it, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say it was one of the best races we've had all season round. And we've had some bangers too. Like, it wasn't just this one. It's been a lot. So I know I've been talking way too long, and again, this is kind of like a mini podcast slash. It's supposed to be mostly a race recap, but as you can say and tell, I am very terrible at timing. I talk a lot, so my apologies in advance. But I do want to know from you guys as well. Do you like what you hear? Do you like what you see? Because again, I can start trying to do this more for the tracks here. I can do this more towards like other ends here. I need to know. I need feedback. So let me know. Do you like what you hear? Do you like what you're seeing here? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know as well. Like I said, I am going to try to do more interviews as well with drivers before we end English Creek here. It will be coming to an end, unfortunately, this season, falling on the 28th. So be prepared for that. Obviously, I got more calls to deal with River Bottom Raceway as well. And if any other tracks would like to hire me on, feel free. I'll stay in touch and contact here. But honestly, like I said, there's a lot going down, a lot happening, and this race just had it all and then some. So be sure to check it out, and be sure to comment below what you thought. Other than that, I appreciate you all for the support, and thank you so much again to English Creek for allowing me to be able to announce for the 22nd Annual Nationals. It was beyond a pleasure. It was beyond cool to be able to interview people that I have never met and be able to get to know them more. some folks that are huge in the names of the business for racing, and some that are just getting their feet into this. It was an honor, it was a pleasure, and I appreciate every single one of you guys out there. Thank you so much for that. Other than that, that's about all I got for you guys today. So until next time, take care.
You can't stop but won't stay dead, 'cause there's a